Wouldn't it be wonderful if we could teach the gullible to never be so comfortable with lies they eat like comfort food, to disregard the bogus claims and pseudoscientific claims? Can you imagine just how much indeed the world would change? No more political predators playing on the populace, but ilkas and plots to shift and kill metropolis. No more villains with the title in the Bible, holding phony temper Bibles like the stuff they teach is vital. Imagine it was normal to have to prove a claim you make, and folks really feel ashamed expressing content that was fake. It's not to say we never make mistakes, it's just to say we go out of our way to show the evidence it takes.
Remain skeptical while you travel the road of reason. Stay strapped with logic and facts. That's what it is, yo. Keep reality intact to help the truth grow. Question every claim, especially the ones you believe in. Remain skeptical while you travel the road of reason.
Welcome to Road to Reason. I'm Brennan McAuliffe.
Paul Sheehan.
And this is your Skeptic's Guide to the 21st Century. All right, so starting out with some news. Paul, you got some news for us?
Yes, in today's news, a religious person killed a bunch of people in the name of their religion. People are still shocked by this attack as the proponents of this religion have publicly espoused the peacefulness of their religion, while at the same time condemning the virtues and nature of the victims of this awful attack. Is extremist in nature and not reflective of their religious beliefs. You think I'm joking? For instance, today, actually in the real news, there's an individual in Jordan by the name of Nahid Hattar who drew a cartoon. And this cartoon was mocking religious extremists in Jordan. And he was actually arrested by the state for mocking the Muslim faith. Though I can't really tell if he's an atheist. I think he actually is a Muslim who just has a problem with extremist Muslims. And while he was waiting outside the courthouse in Jordan, like internationally, they want to be viewed as like shocked and horrified at this, but in reality, you guys arrested him for a religious crime, not a secular crime, and he was murdered for a religious crime, not a secular crime. How do you as a state separate the two when you are not a secular state?
Yeah, I think what the problem with that is it's once you entrench your laws in culture, once you arrive your laws from your culture runs your laws. So if you have this kind of violent attitude towards religious offenses, you end up getting kind of this sense that people who are cultural offenders should be punished by the people of the culture as well, not just that state government.
Well, I think we need that in this country with Christianity. Actually, I do want to make one quick correction. It does say here that he was born a Christian, but he did consider himself an atheist. So that is interesting. And he was also a supporter of Syrian President Bashar Assad as an outspoken critic of ISIS and Al-Qaeda. So I do apologize for missing that. The other news story that I'd like to talk about is, oh my God, you know, I've been reading here about Billy Graham, who's now 97, and I don't mean anybody ill will. I just wish he would freaking die. I'd pray go away. He has now come out, and it's funny because it's ChristianToday.com is where this news story comes from. How Christians can lead their atheist friends to Jesus in just 2 steps. Man, after all these years, Billy Graham has finally narrowed it down to 2 steps.
I mean, that's nice. We always hear like the whole old story about like walking on the beach and you only see one set of footprints. Is that what this is referring to? You have to like climb on Jesus's back and he takes 2 steps?
This is actually quite a bit more simple, and Never thought about this before. You just need to pray for them, and you need to be an example of Christ by living your life as a Christian. This will do it. This will crack open the most hardened and stubborn hearts, according to Billy Graham. Man, this is like one of the great thinkers of our time. You know, it's like
Billy Graham.
Yeah, Billy Graham. So if you just pray, and what's interesting is that, you know, I can't think of how many people I've heard say that they prayed for Christopher Hitchens, and he died an atheist.
Well, I mean, when you've got something like a cancer or like a disease, and then it affects like you as a person, my father had cancer, and I got thousands of people saying, "I'll pray to you," and I mean, whenever they would approach me or approach him, the way he told me to say was just say thank you, because it's a way of thinking about someone. So I mean, we all know it doesn't work.
No, but we don't.
So it's kind of this weird sense of you're standing in the room and with another person, and they're saying, "Watch out for the ledge," but there is no ledge. Watch out.
Man, there's this movie you need to watch. It's like really deep and philosophical. It's called God Is Not Dead Part 2. And it's like, you know, if you just watch that movie and you see that scene where the lady calls up those people and she's like, my cancer is healed. And they're like, of course it is. You prayed to God and He always answers God's prayers, you know. So it's kind of like
So
man,
wasn't the surgery the drugs?
No, of course not, man.
Oh, okay. Man, health insurance is...
Those are just Satan's tools to lead you astray.
Oh,
so,
that's a shame.
Yeah. So, but yeah, it's kind of amazing. Like, as I'm reading this article on ChristianToday.com, I just can't think of like how irrelevant Billy Graham is. But they're like pounding this as if this is like, we've never heard this before. This is like revolutionary. It's like, it's the garbage you guys always preach.
To be fair, I mean, part of it, you're saying he's so kind of irrelevant. I really didn't know who he was until whenever you told me about the story, like before we started, went on air.
Well, there is a generational gap.
I think that's what it is.
You are, how old are you again?
I'm 21.
Okay. So yeah, if you were, say, like in your later 30s, you definitely know who he was, because there was all sorts of like legal battles involving him throughout, like, you know, I'd say like from the 50s forward. Yeah, he's one of those big televangelists who, you know, I think he's the one that said, like, if somebody wasn't elected, Jesus was going to call him home, and that person didn't get elected, and everybody was like, it's time for you to go.
I guess when you make promises you can't keep, people catch up on you.
Yeah, but in either case, pray also that your life will be a witness to Him, a witness to Christ's peace and joy. People may argue with what we say, but they can't argue with the reality of a life that's been transformed by Christ. Wow, man. I don't know what to tell you.
I don't know, leaves one speechless.
Considering that there's very little actual evidence for a historical Jesus to begin with, that's quite a statement from Mr. Graham. In response, Graham stated that the task of softening the mind and the heart of an atheist cannot be accomplished by an individual on their own. He explained that a person who seeks to convert an atheist should employ the help of God, who can conquer even the most stubborn heart. The most important thing you can do for a friend is to pray for him, asking God to convince him of his sins and his pride, and convince him of his need for Christ. Graham is said, quoted by Fox News.
So my question is, I'm wondering about the methodology. So
Okay.
do you go in front of your friend and pray, or by?
Well, actually, yes.
Is it a mixture of like interaction with the friend?
You need to let the friend know. It's part of the testifying.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, you need to let the friend know that you are praying for them.
So
Apparently,
is it like a witnessing type of thing?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it does say in here you need a witness. And to change them. Now, this is the best part of this story. This is the reason I actually brought this story up, because if they aren't converted, whose fault is it?
Well, it's yours, but I think that's actually one of the really interesting things about prayer, is the fact that at least that kind of prayer is, I find, infinitely more useful than just sitting there being like, please God, I want $1 million. Like, asking for self-improvement, it's a little bit more, it's a good step in the right direction. It's a little modest. I appreciate that idea of like help me become a better person, and that's how you do.
With $1 million, I guarantee you I can become a much better person.
Well, that's fair. A certain amount of expendable income goes.
I'd be a righteous dude. I'd help out other people. I'd
Be a righteous dude.
I'd be a righteous dude with $1 million. But as long as that would last me. All right, well, we're going to get ready to go to our break here.
And before we do, I just want to introduce and kind of tease our guest today. Is a man named Kile Jones, and he is a theological scholar and kind of an atheist activist. We'll have his opinion on and talk to him about all that stuff like that in just a moment.
One of the goals of an atheist community is to provide support for those who find themselves without faith in light of mounting evidence against unfounded beliefs. Organizations with this goal range from skeptic groups to humanist service meetups to support groups for those who may have lost a community through their deconversion. In response to this, Recovering from Religion, an organization that seeks to support those who have left their faith, has recently launched the Hotline Project. This is not a deconversion hotline. The motive behind the project is to support a growing population of people who have left their faith and need to construct their identities around a new, beautiful reality. If you want more information, you can visit the Recovering from Religion website at recoveringfromreligion.org.
Homemade noodles. Marty, stop it! Oh my goodness, I'm so sorry. It reminds me, I've been thinking maybe we should try a new form of birth control. I heard about this one, it's called the IUD, intrauterine device. Or we could try the patch on your arm. Actually, I think that one goes in your butt.
Bedsider.org has birth control information and a lot more. And it's...
What do you think then? Arm or the butt?
There's a lot of tree branches and dry brush over here. We should probably move the bonfire over there.
I'm guessing Smokey liked that idea.
This is Richard Dawkins. Doing commercials is unfamiliar territory for me, but I'm inviting you to watch Road to Reason, a skeptic's guide to the 21st century, on Fairfax Public Access every Sunday. Each week, the hosts tackle wishful thinking, religion, pseudoscience, and the harm they cause, with a combination of facts, humor, and community involvement. They challenge believers to defend their faith and give you, the skeptic, a voice. With live call-ins for viewers and streaming on the World Wide Web, there's never a dull moment. Don't wait. Look at them now on Facebook and YouTube, and remember to watch Road to Reason, a skeptic's guide to the 21st century, or there'll be hell to pay.
All right, welcome back. So we have our guest, Mr. Kile Jones. Can you hear us? Can you see us?
Oh yeah, I hear you fine.
All right, and we can see and hear you. All right, so Mr. Jones, would you just like to talk to about yourself? I know you've got several masters. You founded the journal, Claremont Journal for Religion, but like anything else you want to kind of introduce yourself with?
Sure. I mean, one of my main projects is called Interviewing Atheists at Church Day, and I would recommend people look that up. But yeah, I'm a former Christian, former youth pastor, and now I'm I guess an atheist activist, and I do all kinds of other stuff too. So
yeah,
that's me.
Awesome. So, like you said, you were a youth pastor. How does one go from being a youth pastor to the interviewee on Interview an Atheist in Church?
Well, I went off to grad school, as you do, and pursuing kind of my education further. And I always was one to sort of investigate. I never wanted to believe blindly. I wanted to have reasons for why I believed what I did. So I went off to grad school and I started studying all kinds of different stuff. And it's funny now, as an atheist with theology degrees, it's a lot of people mock it like, it's equivalent to studying whatever, mythology or just nothing, the study of something that doesn't exist. Ironically, it's given me a lot of insight, because you do study a lot of different subjects that are very pertinent. Historical issues, things in philosophy of religion, religious history, politics and religion. All this stuff's very relevant, to be honest. So I really enjoyed my theology degrees even after I deconverted. But at the same time, what happened is I just started studying further, and once I really deconstructed things like the biblical text, I started studying the Greek and the Hebrew and the Sitz and Laban, the situation, the context, and all of this sort of secular kind of approaches to religious studies. I started to doubt a lot of what I believed, whether it was the resurrection of Jesus or whether the Bible was God's word or if God even existed.
Would you
debate in religious studies? It's kind of the insider versus outsider debate. Lots of people that do religious studies are religious, but there are tons of people that study religion just from a secular perspective. They want to understand it as a relevant topic in discourse today. People who do religious studies aren't always religious. So I think it's extremely valuable. I mean, I'd even say for my atheist friends, it's wildly important, because I hate to admit it, but as someone, a former insider, a lot of atheist criticism of religion can be quite and very
thousand years worth of practices that you have to examine there. So it's like to dismiss it with a meme is definitely something I think that is atrocious.
Yeah, because I mean, with all of human history has been almost at least intertwined with religion from its beginnings and writings and all sorts of stuff. So, but you were talking about your interview an atheist in church at the beginning. So, how have you been treated with that? Like, how do you like going out, and what kind of reception do you get? Do a lot of people come? Do a little come? I've seen a couple of the interviews, but just explain for our audience.
Sure. Well, of course, I've been privy to all kinds of debates, and there's a particular format that's very popular. You can see it on shows like Dogma Debate, or you just pit like Christopher Hitchens against William Lane Craig and watch them throw feces at each other for a couple hours, and then everyone just sort of leaves. Like it's a gladiatorial fight, really. And of course it has certain value. It can be educational. It's also very entertaining, but I don't think it really builds relationships at all. I think it just contributes to the animosity that already exists. So I mean, pastors are not going to want to sit down and humanize an atheist in front of their churches. They're going to want to show how they're incorrect, how they're wrong, how they're evil, how they're wicked, whatever. And that's not what I'm interested in. And so if somebody else wants to engage the fundamentalists, fine. But that's not me. I don't care to do that. It's a waste of my time, to be honest. So I already know what their position is, and I'm not going to try to set up a humanizing thing that's going to devolve into a debate. And it's just not something I'm interested in.
Yeah, you don't find it productive. I completely understand that, because what I really enjoyed about the style that you had it set up was you made it so that you didn't start out, nobody was on the defensive footing at the beginning. It's all this kind of, hey, so I don't really know much about you, or like the ways that you kind of perceive the world, and I would like to know more about that. I mean, obviously it is always framed in a religious person talking to a non-religious person. Like the conversation always kind of has to contain that. But how much success have you really kind of had from this? Like, what's the feedback you get afterwards? Because that to me seems the most interesting part.
I'll give you a really interesting story for people who are interested in atheists working with Christians or church-going people. I'm at a Presbyterian church in Los Angeles. I'm friends with the two pastors. They're part of a PCUSA church. They're relatively liberal, but still thoroughly Christian in, as far as they identify. So I'm after the interview, and the two pastors, they're in their vestments and their robes and everything, and they're shaking the senior pastor's hand and the associate pastor's hand, and then they're kind of talking to me about what one's elder in the church. As you know, presbytus in Greek means elder or leader, so the church is run by a bunch of elders. The pastors don't run the church, the elders do. So an elder comes up to me, shakes my hand, and says, I'm really glad you came. It was very inspiring to me. And just so you know, I'm an atheist. And I go to this church because I think that the church can do good things in the world, and because my wife's Christian. And, what it does is there's lots of people that go to church not just for religious reasons. And this is what I think a lot of atheists have wrong about some Christians, is that a lot of Christians don't go to church just because they want to affirm their doctrines. They go because it's community. They go because it's a sense of identity. It's a way that they navigate the world around them. It's a way that they try to figure out the complexities of life in a community. It's not just about believing X, Y, and Z. It really is not. For some more conservative Christians, that is really the crux of their faith. The crux of their faith is to be doctrinally sound, to believe the right things, to, please God by correctly believing X, Y, and Z. But tons of Christians, this is not what their faith is about. Yeah. What their faith is about is community, trying to do good things in the world, and that's how they do it. And so, yeah.
It's been really interesting to see Christianity kind of transform like this. It's turned kind of from what it used to be, the kind of religious right form, and it evolved into what like Judaism is almost now, where you'd call yourself like culturally Christian. Like you still go to church, you do Christmas, you do Easter, but you don't really. I don't do the whole Jesus thing. But it's really interesting. I've been running into more and more people who say that and do that, where they're de facto Christians more than anything.
Well, it doesn't. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No.
It doesn't surprise me that you met an atheist in a church. Because it is an observation I've had. One of the groups that I've taken on head on in the past is Scientology. And I've seen politicians who will pander to them because they happen to be in that local area a powerful voting bloc. But I've also seen churches do the opposite. I've seen people that are involved with their church boards because they feel they can get that church members to go out and vote for something they as a business person that are trying to push in the local community. So it does not shock me that you could have someone who's an atheist involved with a church, because it's a body of people that when they act together can actually make change in the community. If you are somebody who is interested in making change in your community, you're going to want to court groups of people or be involved with groups of people that have the means voting wise to make that happen. So what you're saying to me is true, just from experiences dealing with even some whacked out churches and the relationships that they have with secular groups. So that does make a lot of sense.
And so if you don't want to go kind of into this direction, that's fine. But yeah, I read your blog, and you've written quite a lot about like atheism and feminism. And I'm wondering, like a lot came about with like the whole Atheism Plus movement, and a lot of just really interesting stuff, especially now with like the rise of the atheist YouTuber. You get a lot of these anti-feminist, but it gets a little hazy. So like, what is your take on the whole getting atheist into, or rather combining the way that atheism is not practiced but thought of, and combined with feminism?
Well, for me, in my view of things, feminism isn't a pejorative. It's not a bad word. To me, it's a very positive word. I mean, people understand feminism in a whole host of ways. Feminism certainly is not monolithic. It's not one easy thing that you can pick out. There are tons of different types of feminists out there, with all kinds of different political views and everything. But generally speaking, there are certain trends, I would say, in feminism. Like, in particular, you're socially liberal, right? You believe in things like reproductive freedoms. You believe in gender equality, these sorts of things, right? And there has been a big split and a moving shift amongst atheists regarding this issue. You have the libertarian men's rights activists on one end, and then you have what some people call social justice warriors or whatever on the other end. And it shows, once again, that atheism isn't this clear community. There's a whole bunch of different views within the atheist community. But I'm certainly more on the kind of left-leaning side of things. That's for sure. And so I definitely encourage other atheists, particularly white men like myself, to not view feminism as a pejorative, to try to understand the history of feminism, why it exists, why it's important, and to not dismiss the privilege that it is to be a white man in America. I mean, that's just, to me, that's not even a controversial thing. It's just a fact to me. But once again, people are entitled to their opinions. I'm also entitled to disagree with them. So that's sort of where I stand.
I wanted to take a moment and ask you about the research that you have done, because it's quite extensive. In fact, right before the show, we were talking to someone about something you wrote, and they were like, oh, how could he answer all that in a white paper? And then they read it, and they're like, oh my God, it's like 40 pages long, 10,000 words, It's like, this guy really does his research. And I guess one of the questions I have is, with the research that you've done, what would you say is an effect, like with everything that you looked at, what is effect in moving people away from just religious dogmatic thinking towards applying skepticism and at least trying to make some standard of scrutinizing what they're told? What's effective?
Sure. That is really the question to me. That is ultimately what my life is about, is finding out the most effective means, method, or manner by which you help people move towards a positive change. That sounds very Tony Robbins and everything, what I just said, but it's generally what I'm interested in. There's one way that people go about it where they debate, right? It's pretty much a conflict model. You debate ideas and you try to convince the other person logically, rationally, evidentially that their beliefs are false or misguided or unfounded, and then you try to explain to them why these other beliefs are better. That's not really what I do. People are a lot more complicated. People are not just belief holders. I mean, we have all kinds of other things that are important to us besides beliefs. We have emotions, we have sentiments, we have opinions, convictions, existential states, we have emotional, psychological factors, we have all kinds of different things. Humans are multifarious, we're complicated people. And sometimes when you approach people with this conflict model, all it does is harden cognitive bias. I mean, we know this from psychological studies. Now, this doesn't mean you need to be wishy-washy or, you know, act like everyone can just get along and everyone can believe whatever the hell they want and all the beliefs are equally valid or true. I don't believe that at all. I think some beliefs are completely hazardous and false. But how I convey that is a different question. Okay? The method and the manner by which I approach people that are different from me has all the value in the world. So some of the things that I do, particularly with Christians and Muslims and other religious folks, is I try to approach them as people. Okay, we always hear this religious people, right? This term. And some people focus so much on the religious part and so little on the people part. For me, they're people who happen to be religious. They're not religious people. I mean, so once again, seeing the flesh and blood from people, that is important. And meeting them where they're at. I think sometimes some people can come across with a certain arrogance, a hubris, and you can just be a jerk. I'm sorry, I don't care if you're religious or you're an atheist. Religious people don't own being a jerk. And so what I'm saying is that there are more effective ways of approaching people as humans and trying to find at least some sort of commonalities by which you can build a relationship and work through some of this stuff.
Yeah,
now,
no, I definitely agree with you wholeheartedly that you, in order to have a fruitful discussion, you've got to separate the people from the ideas. But can't you at the same time say that obviously the person is made up of their ideas? Like you talked about all the multifaceted nature of humans, but each of those parts do play a part in being a human. And so is this why you're going around things like I know you went and started like the Claremont Journal for Religion, and is that like part of one of your other ways of getting at people besides like interview an atheist in church and some of the other things that you do?
Yeah, it is. Everything that I do is has a particular motive and reason behind it. But I definitely want to say that I do not believe in a one-size-fits-all approach. When people ask me this question, they ask me, you know, what's the best way to approach religious people? As if there's a singular way. There isn't one way. There's a million different ways, and context matters. So I don't believe in a one-size-fits-all approach, and I definitely don't think it's so simplistic as complicated to have a simplistic.
That's fair. You know, when you like the things that a jerk. Atheists question is,
people who want to work with atheists who want to work with religious people or try to talk to them?
well, I'm just saying, like, okay, like, I'm an atheist, and I care about things like separation of church and state. I care about what's true. I'm deeply concerned about the impact of religious, and I'll have a follow-up question here in a minute, but I'm deeply concerned about the impact religious thinking people have on laws, on culture. So, it's one of those things where I guess what I'm asking is, what trends do you see that people can apply that would be beneficial to reducing what appears to be this push towards, right and truth?
The kind of more firebrand atheist groups like American Atheists or whatever, to the more humanist identities and community. These are very vital. So growing active, non-believing communities that do things, right, that are politically engaged, that are socially concerned. These are very vital, and they have been growing. They've been growing immensely in the last 20 years, particularly in the U.S. I mean, you have groups all over the United States that never existed 20 years ago. So this is, to me, a very positive shift. This is important. It's especially important in counteracting what you were mentioning about, the religious right and the theocratic impulse and the anti-secularist approach to things. I mean, these communities are going to be what help counteract that. Absolutely. But once again, we have comrades who are religious, though. Let's not forget this. We have all the pastors that I work with, they're secular. They believe in the strong separation of church and state. They've seen what's happened when theocracy has occurred. They've looked at the history of their own faith and seen what has happened, and they don't want that. So I think building coalitions of people, whether they're religious or non-religious, but have a particular secularist approach is important too. So I think we also need to cast a broad net and realize that there are tons of religious people out there that are secular, that are care about things like scientific education. They believe in evolution. They, they're against a lot of what we're against.
It sounds like what I'm hearing is you're seeing that there's a value, instead of trying to convert religious people, about building our own communities and building solidarity where we can with religious people. Is that what I'm taking?
Absolutely. That's what I do.
And I mean, I 100% support that kind of people who are like politically active and kind of think in these same ways. Like, how would you kind of build a group around that? Because I mean, we were talking just it crosses cultural lines, it crosses religious lines, really, because everyone who is a member of a religion can deconvert. So it crosses the cultural bounds. And so do you kind of see anything running these?
Yeah, absolutely. What I've found is that when you look at a person beyond the label that they identify, I mean, for instance, I'm a firm atheist. I mean, atheism is very important to me and my identity, and it's valuable to me. But at the same time, I'm not just an atheist. I think I get hung up a lot when someone says I'm a Muslim, I'm a Christian, or I'm an atheist. These identities and these titles are meaningful. I'm definitely not saying they're not. They're how people navigate the world, and they're important. At the same time, that's not just what people are. People are a lot more than the labels they identify with. And to me, that's important to see, especially if you want to build coalition off the religious right. Want to just lump together the Southern Baptist firebrand preacher with pastors. They're simply not. Even if they both identify as the same.
The opposite direction. I go to great lengths not to label myself, because I find that once I do that, like my vision of, say, I'm an atheist and I profess that to someone else, they automatically in their brain start categorizing me with, if say, the negative connotations that come along with that, or what they interpret an atheist as. And I've seen this go on like in the social justice issue. Like for instance, if you were to use the word feminism to different age groups and to different people with the experiences they've had, that means a different thing. As a woman, say in her 60s, it may have something more to do with like equal rights amendment. To someone who's in their 20s, it may have something to do with all men are pigs, or or whatever the particular misconception or conception is. And I'm wondering, in your research, how much of a role do you think labels, how people label themselves and how they label each other, plays a factor in being able to make effective change?
Well, it's a human. And kill all religious people. I'm not really worried too much about how people me based on the label I use. My point is that if I use this label, let me show you what I think this really means. And what to me this really means is being a caring person, being considerate, being compassionate, trying to be understanding. See, I want to be understanding to religious people because I want them to be understanding to me. I'm going to do my best to try to be fair to them because I want them to be fair to me. Now, that may be a more than gracious approach, but that's just the side that I err on. And so, yeah, of course, labels can be deconstructed and dismissed, and some of that might be important. But let's just face the facts. people identify with labels, and it's important to them. And so I want to counteract negative stereotypes. So like interviewing atheists at church day. There's a reason I said atheist there. I could have said humanist, non-believer, whatever, non-religious person at church day. But I want to counteract the negative stereotypes of what people think atheists are. And so I deliberately put interviewing atheists at church. Because that way, when the people in church are looking and listening to
trying to accomplish actually.
So, or go to YouTube, you an atheist at church day. There's tons, not just of other atheists that I've set up with pastors, and I'd recommend watching them. It's basically just a constructive conversation between people where they kind of try to understand each other. And it's not a volatile environment. It's not like a debate. It really isn't. You watch it and you'd be surprised at how well these things go. You would imagine that there may be more animosity, but there's a lot less than people think, and it's really surprising. I mean, my atheist friends that are a bit more firebrand than me are like, what the hell are you doing? You know, and then they watch it and they're like, you know what? That actually went pretty well. And so it does, for me, it's all about humanizing other people. I mean, humans are very tribal. We knit ourselves up into our little groups, we circle our wagons, and we attack other people. You know, it gives us a sense of certainty, a sense of value, like we are better than other people. I mean, this is just a human thing that we do.
With the age of the internet, I have no idea what you're talking about. So,
absolutely.
So, which is weird, because it's this technology that was supposed to bring us all together, and it somehow seems to have made us even more isolated and reinforce our own beliefs even more. It's like, I don't have to watch ABC News, you know, with all, you know, with different perspectives. I can go to my own echo, reinforce my own beliefs.
I gotta say, I don't agree with that whole idea, because I mean, paper, and so it was kind of the sense of the only information you got at one area, so everyone had to think that way.
My friend, let me tell you something.
Is it just me not knowing?
As a guy who's approaching 50, yeah, what you're saying isn't technically wrong, but having had that generational life experience of having to go out and talk to your neighbor, you know, physically, and there is something, and I don't know, you know, in your research if you found this to be true, but when you are face to face with someone, you tend to behave in a more civilized manner, in my opinion, than having that buffer of the internet there where people can hide behind identities and things like that.
No, I agree on that part completely. I'm just talking about the receiving of information. The fact that, I mean, we have Wikipedia. We can look up almost anything. If you type in a noun or any kind of spelling of something will pop up. But we just don't do it because we have the resources to. We don't have the time. What
about that? Like in your efforts with Church Day and the other stuff, do you see a value of being there in person different than engaging people on the internet?
Well, yeah, there's obviously a difference. You get to see somebody's body mannerisms. You get to see their body language. I mean, that's vital in communication. That's one of the difficult things about things like Twitter, is you don't get to see the person. You don't get to see the inflection of when they say something, or their tone, or their eye movements, their body movements. You don't get to see gestures. And all of this communication, this nonverbal communication, is very important. And we don't get to see that when, you know, we're behind the sort of screen of the internet. It's not as if people haven't been acting this way since time immemorial. It's just that we can see it now. It's not like police weren't brutal to people before videos, or before video cameras. They were. We just see it more because we have video cameras.
Yeah.
And to me, that's probably a good thing. Like, I'm of the opinion that every police officer should weigh a stupid camera. But at the same time, they were brutal before video cameras existed, and people were brutal before the internet existed. We just get to see it now.
It just seems to me, and I have to admit I'm kind of guilty of this myself, like when I'm having a discussion, it's not even a debate, I'm having a discussion with a theist online, and it's being typed out. I hear sarcasm in their words that it's like my inner voice of who they are. It's kind of like, I get this smarmy response. Of course, I have no ways. You're talking about there's no body language, there's no tonality, and then subconsciously they're becoming a bad person in my mind. Where if I was doing what you did, going to a church, first of all, I'm tempered by the fact that there are consequences for how I'm behaving, because I'm like right there, but also I can't project these things on them, and I'm wondering for like people that want to become involved with Church Day, are there like workshops, are there things that basic tool sets that you think that they should have to before they, because obviously it could be a disaster if the person isn't in the right frame of mind to do this. What are you thinking, like if someone wants to kind of take this on and do this, what do they need to be equipped with?
Well, I encourage people to do this. It definitely doesn't have to be officially through my project. Although, people can always reach out to me and contact me, and I'll see if I can arrange an interview with the pastor. I mean, I know lots of pastors. That's partially why it's easier for me to do it than other people. But I'd encourage anybody to look up local churches, to email the pastors, to introduce themselves, to get to know them, maybe even go to church on a Sunday and just talk to people. I mean, of course, you can look up the denomination, you can look up their statement of faith, or just generally investigate where they're at, and because you might not be comfortable going to a more conservative church. I always joke, if I'm in a conservative church, I wish the proverbial lightning strikes but at the same time, there are lots of very hospitable churches out there. You can go really liberal and go to like a Unitarian Universalist church where they might even have a human there.
Are these the Reform Unitarians, those damn heretics? I'm just teasing.
or you can go to some of the denominations that I particularly target are ones that are hospitable to atheists. So United Methodist Church, Presbyterian Church USA. There's lots of really liberal Lutheran churches or Episcopalian churches. I'd encourage any atheist to go out and just get to know church-going people and see how to, what you can do with them.
It seems to be a real challenge, because I've tried to invite theists on this show all the time. We've only ever had one. And it's because I think, you kind of mentioned, earlier you were talking about more like the more, which is threatened because they don't want to look like they're losing a discussion or a debate with an atheist. There really is this nuance of being able to, because a lot of them have been told atheists are evil, horrible people, so you got that to contend with. But then you also have this, like, a minister's livelihood is on the table if, it looks like that they've been put to the ropes on this. So it's just kind of, I guess people probably should reach out to you if they're going to do it and get some tips on how to actually just open that door to begin with, because it's not easy, and I can attest to that as a producer of the show.
Well, no, I think that I definitely think that speaks to the design of Interviewing an Atheist in Church Day. It's because, again, like if you, it's bringing them to the lion's den, and kind of Interviewing an Atheist is the other way around, but because you're not quite sure what it's like in the enemy's camp. And so I think that maybe we could do kind of this model of Kyle's model and have them come on and interview somebody here.
I'd have tons of pastors that would be willing to go on this show and talk to you.
I'd love to. And so what are you working on right now that you want to share with people? What website would you like them to visit to get more information on this?
Well, I'm always doing Interviewing Atheists at Church Day. I have a few churches I'm going to be visiting early next year and doing some interviews with. I'm working with a lot of the humanists here in Arizona in this burning hellhole. So I look up Spectrum Experience with Evan Clark and Sarah Blaine. A lot of the work that they do, Unbelievers Radio out here with Andre, my friend Andre in Phoenix. They do lots of humanist political activism out here in Phoenix, and they're really amazing. So Spectrum Experience and the Humanist Experience, I would look them up. But once again, I'd Google Interviewing Atheists at Church Day. You can contact me. You just Google my name, Kile B. Jones, and lots of stuff will pop up. You'll be able to contact me. If you're interested in being interviewed or setting one of these up, please give me a message, shoot me an email, friend me on Facebook, message me. I'm really easy to find, and I'll do whatever I can to help. But I got lots of different stuff in the works. I'm writing a book with a Catholic priest, a friend of mine right now. Say I just let Godgul do the work, and just Google and with me, and I'd love to meet you.
All right. Yeah, no, that sounds like a whole lot of stuff on your plate. When that book comes out, make sure to call us back up again, and we can talk about that.
I'd like to do a review of it when it's done. If you can send us a PDF copy or something, we'll check it out. We can do a whole segment on it.
Absolutely, that would be great. I'd even get the priest on with me if you're interested.
Sounds like a plan. And with that, we got about 5 seconds left, so make sure to check us out on Facebook and YouTube. And next week, we'll be doing a Sex Positive Feminists. We'll see you then. Thank you for being on.